Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Rader, and I'm here to support my fellow economics teachers as the DCS for 12th grade. And in this lesson, we're going to analyze the economics concept of the circular flow model and consider what the circular flow model can tell us about how economies function. So my goal in this relatively short video is to discuss some of the tools and strategies that you can employ in your own classrooms to maximize student engagement and offer opportunities for students to work synchronously and asynchronously, regardless of whether they're in a virtual environment or if they are in an in-person environment. So the first support that I just want to call out on this worksheet is the teacher support slide for students with disabilities. Every single line that has an underlining on it, there are additional hyperlinked resources that can be very useful for helping you reach your learners in your classroom. And the second thing that I want to just point out to everybody is where this lesson came from. You can find all this material in your Google Drive as part of the Teach Hub. And for the Passport to Social Studies for Digital Learning. And day 8 comes from Mini Unit B on choice. Okay, so in this lesson, this would be the opening slide that the students would see in the digital curriculum. One of the things that I do just to make things more transparent for my own students in economics is I'll look at the focus question. I'll include it in the slides so students can see it, really asking them to consider, in this case, again, what the circular flow model could tell us about the functioning of economies. We include a slide here for our lesson objectives so that it's very transparent to our students what we want them to be able to learn or to be able to do by the end of the lesson. In this case, they're going to analyze the components of the circular flow model. And in the opening prompt, students will look at an actual circular flow model itself, and they can respond to a series of questions on the slide. You may choose to modify the questions. You may choose to leave them as they are. I also include additional guiding questions on the notes for the slides, and I'll use that in my own classrooms when I'm projecting a PowerPoint presentation on the Google slide to really extend and support student thinking beyond the information that might be in the slide that they would have to write about in the document itself, and really thinking about what we can learn about the circular flow model from the context, the overview for the reading, and really considering the stakeholders and decision makers, in this case, looking at households, so the students and their families, firms, which really are the businesses that produce the goods and the services, and really the two major markets that we were looking at, which are product markets and factor markets, and really getting students to think critically about the various ways in which these different decision makers and markets are dependent upon one another. So with that in mind, in the introduction model slides, it is recommended that you do it synchronously with your entire class. And the video clip from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis can be very, very useful for illustrating this process for your students. Now you'll note it is an 8-minute video clip, but it is really recommended if you're going to do this synchronously to have them watch from around 17 seconds to 1 minute and 32 seconds. And while you can choose to watch the remainder of the video, it's really going to depend on the needs of your students and the time constraints of your classroom, depending on your school's class schedule. In the video, what we will ask students to consider is to make comparisons to what they thought about the circular flow model from before, just by analyzing the diagram, and really being able to explain how the model, what it illustrates about the economy, markets, goods, and services, and again, really thinking about this mini unit on choice that students need to make. So we can also include the circular flow model in the Google slide presentation itself for students to be able to explain various different components, and then to apply the circular flow model to an article, Saving for College Tech, which we can find here, that was also developed by the curriculum team at the New York City Department of Education. And it's a relatively short resource, so depending on time constraints in your school, it could be done as a read aloud. It could be done if you are virtual in Zoom breakout rooms where you can provide students choice. So with the DOE Zoom application, students can opt to go into their own breakout rooms. And one of the things that I do for my students, I try to give them the choice. Maybe they're the kind of student who in a whole group class discussion will keep the cameras off, the microphones unmuted. It's the thing that we see all the time. But if they're in a smaller group with 3 or 4 other students who might be willing to turn on their cameras, well, maybe they go into the breakout room with the cameras on. Maybe another group of students go into a breakout room where the cameras are off, but the microphones are on and they're talking to each other and engaging. A third room could be students who really want to work more independently. And perhaps a fourth room could be a room where students have really ample access to the chat function and are proficient in it, and then communicate with each other over instant messaging on the Zoom platform. But regardless of how you choose to group your students, the reading itself is short enough where the students can really think through the opportunity costs that are involved when they're thinking about saving for college tech. And it also allows students opportunity to really map the scenario onto a blank circular flow model diagram and respond to very specific prompts. So they can really think about all of the different factors that would be involved in the circular flow model diagram. So you will ask students to really describe the exchange of money and resources that are involved in that article, looking at saving for college tech, thinking about how or whether markets can even exist without the firms or our households. And again, really thinking about how each of the different participants in the larger market are really dependent upon one another for it to function effectively. And really thinking about how economic activity can expand or contract within circular flow. And then thinking about this last question, would a market work without money? And then explaining the challenges that this poses for buyers and sellers in market-based economies that are predicated on the capitalist system, where we have markets of exchange and we have particular currencies that can be used to pay for products. So again, whether we're looking at wages, salaries, profits, rents, or dividends, or if we're thinking about the purchases that are being made between various different goods and services as it exists within the larger economy. And for the wrap up, this would best be done synchronously with your students, again, whether in person or virtually, and really getting students to expand on their thinking in terms of those discussion questions that they put together in their independent work, and then building on everything they've done throughout the lesson as part of your line of inquiry in the rollout of the material for the students. And they're a very easy, useful check for understanding to see if students are with you. You can ask them to consider to what extent is the circular flow model an accurate representation of how our economy functions. And depending on what they write in the document, or if you ask them to share out verbally, it can give you a good sense as to what the various challenges might be in your students' interpretations of the circular flow model. All right, so that'll do it for today's guidance video. Stay tuned for the next video in the series on economics, and hope everybody has a great day. Take care.